When Michael Jordan was just 15 years old, he stood outside a small diner in North Carolina with an empty stomach and empty pockets, watching people eat through the window because he was too ashamed to go inside and ask for help. He had spent his last few dollars on bus fare to get to a basketball tryout that could change his life, but now he was so hungry he could barely think straight. That's when a kind woman named Miss Dot opened the door and invited him in, serving him a huge breakfast without asking for a single penny. She told him to remember this moment when he made it big someday, and to help someone else the way she was helping him. Michael promised he would never forget, but what he did for her decades later was so incredible that it would change thousands of lives forever. Michael Jordan stood in the doorway of a small diner in Wilmington, North Carolina, his hands trembling slightly as he clutched a worn basketball under one arm. The year was 1978, and the 15-year-old boy who would one day become the greatest basketball player in history was just another hungry teenager who had spent his last few dollars on bus fare to get to a summer tournament tryout. The smell of bacon and fresh coffee wafted through the screen door, making his empty stomach clench with a hunger that went beyond physical need. He had been standing there for nearly 10 minutes, watching through the window as customers came and went, debating whether he should go inside and explain his situation or simply walk away and try to ignore the gnawing emptiness in his belly. The door suddenly swung open, and a woman in her mid-40s with kind eyes and graying hair, pulled back in a simple bun, looked at him with concern. Her name was Dorothy Mitchell, though everyone in the neighborhood called her Miss Dot. And she had worked at Jimmy's Corner Diner for the past 12 years. She had seen plenty of hungry kids in her time, and something about the way this tall, lanky boy stood there with pride fighting against desperation in his eyes told her everything she needed to know. Without a word, she stepped aside and gestured for him to come in, her flour-dusted apron swaying as she moved. Michael hesitated, his pride warring with his hunger, but the warmth in her expression and the genuine kindness in her gesture made him take that first difficult step across the threshold. Inside, the diner was bustling with the lunch crowd, and Miss Dot led him to a small booth in the back corner, away from the curious stares of other patrons. She disappeared into the kitchen without taking his order, and Michael sat there feeling exposed and vulnerable, his basketball resting on the cracked vinyl seat beside him. He could hear the clatter of dishes and the sizzle of the grill, the murmur of conversations around him, creating a cocoon of normalcy that made his own situation feel even more acute. 5 minutes later, Miss Dot returned with a plate piled high with scrambled eggs, bacon, toast, hash browns, and a tall glass of orange juice. She set it down in front of him with a gentle smile and said something that would echo in his mind for decades to come. The words were simple but profound in their kindness, spoken in a soft Southern accent that carried the weight of genuine care. She told him that everyone needs help sometimes, and that there was no shame in accepting a meal from someone who had been blessed enough to give it. She said she could see something special in him, a fire in his eyes that reminded her of her own son, who had passed away 3 years earlier in a car accident. Her boy had been a dreamer too, she said, always talking about making it big and doing something important with his life. She saw that same determination in Michael's face, and she wanted to help fuel whatever dream was burning inside him. Before he could protest or promise to pay her back, she placed her hand gently on his shoulder and told him to eat up because champions needed their strength. Michael ate that meal with tears threatening to spill from his eyes, each bite tasting like more than just food but like hope and dignity restored. He had been cut from his high school varsity basketball team just a few months earlier, a rejection that had devastated him and made him question whether his dreams of playing basketball were nothing more than foolish fantasies. His family struggled financially, with his father working long hours at a manufacturing plant and his mother juggling multiple jobs to keep food on the table for 5 children. He had taken on odd jobs himself, mowing lawns and washing cars, but the money always seemed to disappear into the family's needs before he could save anything for himself. This tournament he was heading to represented one of the few chances he had to prove himself, to show the coaches who had overlooked him that they had made a mistake, and the thought of showing up weak from hunger had filled him with despair. Miss Dot returned several times as he ate, refilling his juice and bringing him extra toast, never once making him feel like a charity case or someone to be pitied. She told him stories about the diner and the neighborhood, about the regular customers who came in every day, and the little dramas that played out in the booths and at the counter. She talked about her late son, whose name was Marcus, and how he had loved basketball just like Michael did, spending every free moment at the local court practicing his shots and dreaming of college scholarships. Her voice carried both sadness and joy when she spoke of him, and Michael found himself sharing his own dreams with her, talking about how he wanted to be the best player anyone had ever seen, how he wanted to make his parents proud and show everyone who had doubted him that they were wrong. When he finally finished eating and reached into his pocket to show her the few coins he had left, offering them to her even though they both knew it was nowhere near enough to cover the meal, Miss Dot shook her head firmly and pushed his hand away. She told him to keep his money and use it for something important, and then she said something that would become a defining moment in his life. She made him promise that someday, when he made it big and achieved all those dreams he had been talking about, he would remember this moment and remember her, Marcus. She asked him to promise that he would find someone who needed help the way he needed it right now, and that he would give them the same kind of chance she was giving him. She said that was how goodness survived in the world, through chains of kindness that connected one person to another across time and circumstance. Michael made that promise with his whole heart, his voice breaking slightly as he spoke the words. He left the diner that day with a full stomach and something even more valuable, a renewed sense of purpose, and the knowledge that someone believed in him even when he struggled to believe in himself. The tournament went well, better than he had dared to hope, and he caught the attention of several coaches who saw the raw talent and fierce determination that would soon become his trademark. Over the following weeks and months, he returned to Jimmy's Corner Diner whenever he could, not because he needed a meal, but because he wanted to see Miss Dot and tell her about his progress. She celebrated every one of his victories, no matter how small, and offered encouragement when he faced setbacks or disappointments. Their relationship evolved into something deeper than a simple act of charity repaid with gratitude. Miss Dot became a mentor and a surrogate mother figure, someone he could talk to about his fears and aspirations without judgment. She attended some of his games when her work schedule allowed, sitting in the stands and cheering louder than anyone else, her pride in him evident to everyone around her. Michael's basketball skills continued to develop at an extraordinary rate, and by his senior year of high school, he had transformed from the gangly kid who got cut from varsity into a star player, being recruited by major college programs. Through it all, Miss Dot was there, offering her quiet support and reminding him to stay humble and grateful for his opportunities. When Michael received a full scholarship to the University of North Carolina, Miss Dot was one of the first people he told. They celebrated at the diner with a piece of her famous apple pie, and she cried tears of joy while telling him how proud Marcus would have been to see someone chase their dreams with such dedication. Michael promised her he would make the most of this opportunity, that he would work harder than anyone else and prove that her faith in him had not been misplaced. As he prepared to leave for college, he visited the diner one last time, and Miss Dot pressed a small package into his hands. Inside was a photograph of Marcus in his basketball uniform, along with a note that simply said to remember where he came from and to stay true to himself no matter how high he climbed. College life brought new challenges and opportunities, and Michael thrived under the legendary coach Dean Smith at UNC. He became a star player, leading his team to victory, and making a game-winning shot in the NCAA championship game as a freshman that would become one of the most famous moments in college basketball history. Through all the accolades and attention, he kept Marcus's photograph in his dorm room and later in his apartment, a constant reminder of the promise he had made to Miss Dot. He called her regularly to share his news and to hear about life back in Wilmington, those conversations grounding him and keeping him connected to the person he had been before fame and success began to change his world. After college, Michael was drafted by the Chicago Bulls and began his professional career in the NBA. The young man who had once stood hungry outside a diner was now earning more money than he had ever imagined possible, but he never forgot the lesson Miss Dot had taught him about using success to help others. He sent money to her regularly, though she always protested and tried to return it, insisting that she had everything she needed. He bought her a new car when her old one finally died, and he paid off the mortgage on the small house she owned near the diner. Each time she accepted his gifts with tears and gratitude, but she always reminded him that the best way to honor her and Marcus was to keep the chain of kindness going. Michael's career soared to unprecedented heights as he led the Bulls to championship after championship, becoming not just a basketball legend but a global icon. His face appeared on billboards and magazine covers around the world, and his name became synonymous with excellence and determination. Despite the overwhelming demands on his time and the constant pressure of being in the public eye, he made sure to visit Miss Dot whenever he returned to North Carolina. Those visits became sacred to him. Moments when he could step away from the persona of Michael Jordan, the superstar, and just be Mike, the kid who once needed help and received it from a kind stranger. The years passed, and life continued its inevitable march forward. Miss Dot retired from the diner after nearly 30 years of service, and the neighborhood began to change around her. The small businesses that had given the area its character started to close, replaced by chain stores and parking lots. Jimmy's Corner Diner, the place where Michael's life had been changed by a simple act of kindness, struggled to stay open as newer restaurants drew away customers. Miss Dot watched these changes with a mixture of sadness and acceptance, understanding that time moved on whether people were ready or not. She continued to follow Michael's career with pride, watching his games on television and keeping a scrapbook filled with newspaper clippings about his achievements. In 1999, Michael announced his retirement from basketball for the second time, and the sports world mourned the end of an era. He had accomplished everything a player could dream of achieving, with 6 NBA championships, 5 MVP awards, and countless records that seemed likely to stand for generations. In his retirement speech, he spoke about gratitude and the people who had helped him along the way, and though he did not mention her by name, Miss Dot knew that some of his words were meant for her. She watched from her living room, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, feeling the bittersweet mixture of pride in his achievements and sadness that this chapter of basketball history was closing. Michael remained busy in retirement with various business ventures and endorsements, but he never stopped thinking about the promise he had made all those years ago. He had helped countless people over the years through charitable donations and programs, always trying to give back in ways that would make a real difference. He established scholarships for underprivileged youth, built basketball courts in low-income neighborhoods, and supported various causes that promoted education and opportunity. Yet something about his connection to Miss Dot felt unfinished, as if the debt he owed her went deeper than any amount of money or individual acts of charity could repay. Then, in the spring of 2003, Michael received a phone call that made his heart sink. Miss Dot had suffered a serious stroke and was in the hospital, her prognosis uncertain. He immediately flew to North Carolina and spent hours at her bedside, holding her hand and talking to her, even though the doctors were not sure how much she could understand. She survived that crisis, but she emerged from it weakened and frail, no longer able to live independently. Her small pension and savings were not enough to cover the kind of care she needed, and the prospect of her spending her remaining years in a substandard nursing facility filled Michael with a determination to do something meaningful. He arranged for Miss Dot to receive the best medical care available, hiring private nurses and making sure she had everything she needed to recover as much as possible. As she regained some of her strength and mobility, though she would never be quite the same as before, Michael spent long hours sitting with her and listening to her stories. She talked about her life, about Marcus and the dreams she had held for him, about the satisfaction she had found in simple acts of kindness over the years. She told him that she had no regrets about how she had lived, that she felt blessed to have known him and to have played even a small part in his journey. Those conversations planted the seeds of an idea in Michael's mind, something that grew and evolved as he considered how to truly honor the promise he had made. Miss Dot eventually recovered enough to leave the hospital, but she could no longer live alone in her house. Michael could have simply arranged for her to move into an upscale assisted living facility, providing her with comfort and security for her remaining years. Many people would have considered that more than generous, a fitting repayment for a meal given to a hungry teenager decades earlier. But Michael understood that what Miss Dot had given him went far beyond food or even financial support. She had given him dignity at a moment when he felt worthless, belief when he doubted himself, and a lesson about the power of kindness that had shaped the man he became. To truly honor that gift, he needed to do something that would ripple outward the way her kindness had rippled through his life. In the summer of 2003, Michael announced the creation of the Dorothy Mitchell Foundation, named after Miss Dot and dedicated to helping struggling young people achieve their dreams. The foundation would provide not just scholarships but also mentorship programs, connecting successful professionals with youth from disadvantaged backgrounds. It would offer emergency assistance to families facing crisis situations, the kind of immediate help that could mean the difference between giving up and persevering. Most importantly, and it would operate based on the principle that Miss Dot had lived by, treating recipients with dignity and respect, never making them feel like charity cases but rather like people worthy of investment and belief. Michael funded the foundation with a significant portion of his personal wealth, ensuring it would have the resources to make a real and lasting impact. He recruited a board of directors that included educators, social workers, and successful business people who shared his vision of creating opportunities for others. The foundation's headquarters were established in Willington, in a renovated building not far from where Jimmy's Corner Diner had once stood. On the wall of the main lobby hung a large photograph of Miss Dot from her younger years, standing in front of the diner with that same warm smile that had welcomed a hungry teenager so many years before. But Michael did not stop there. He purchased Miss Dot's small house and the surrounding property, then worked with architects and contractors to transform it into something extraordinary. The house was carefully preserved and restored, becoming the centerpiece of a larger campus that included a community center with a full basketball court, a library, tutoring rooms, and spaces for various youth programs. The facility was designed to be welcoming and accessible, a place where young people from all backgrounds could come to learn, play, and receive support. It was named the Marcus Mitchell Youth Center, in honor of Miss Dot's son, ensuring that his memory would live on by helping others achieve the dreams he never got the chance to pursue. On the day of the grand opening, Miss Dot sat in a place of honor on the stage, looking out at the crowd of community members, local officials, and media representatives who had gathered for the ceremony. Michael stood at the podium, speaking about the importance of kindness and the ways that a single act of generosity could change the course of a life. He told the story of a 15-year-old boy who stood outside a diner, too proud to ask for help but desperately in need of it. He talked about the woman who saw past his pride to his potential and who gave him not just a meal, but a lesson in human dignity that he had carried with him ever since. His voice broke with emotion as he described the promise he had made and his determination to honor it in a way that would continue to help others long after both he and Miss Dot were gone. Then Michael revealed something that no one in the audience had expected. He announced that in addition to the foundation and the youth center, he was establishing a permanent endowment that would provide free meals to young people in need at diners and restaurants throughout the Wilmington area. Any young person who came in hungry, regardless of their circumstances, would be fed with dignity and respect. No questions asked. The program would be called Marcus's Meal, and it would be funded in perpetuity by the foundation. Business owners who participated would be reimbursed for the meals they provided, and they would receive training on how to serve young people with the same kindness and grace that Miss Dot had shown. The goal was to create a network of safe spaces where hungry kids could find nourishment and support, where they would be treated not as problems to be solved, but as people with potential to be encouraged. The audience erupted in applause, and many people wiped away tears as they absorbed the magnitude of what Michael had created. This was not just a generous donation or a charitable program, but a living legacy that would continue to impact lives for generations. Miss Dot herself was crying openly, overwhelmed by the realization that her simple act of kindness had grown into something far beyond anything she could have imagined. Michael helped her to her feet and embraced her as cameras flashed, and the applause continued. Two people connected across the years by a moment of compassion and the promise that had grown from it. In the weeks and months that followed, the Dorothy Mitchell Foundation and the Marcus Mitchell Youth Center became thriving hubs of activity and hope. Young people poured through the doors, taking advantage of the programs and opportunities available to them. Some came for tutoring help, others for mentorship or just a safe place to spend time after school. The basketball court was in constant use, with pickup games and organized leagues giving kids an outlet for their energy and a place to develop their skills and character. The staff treated every young person who walked through the doors with respect and dignity, embodying the values that Miss Dot had modeled so many years before. The Marcus's Meal program proved to be just as successful, with dozens of restaurants and diners throughout the area signing up to participate. Young people in need found that they could walk into these establishments and receive a hot meal without shame or judgment, and many of them went on to achieve things they might never have accomplished if hunger had remained a constant companion. Some of those kids eventually became volunteers and mentors themselves, continuing the chain of kindness that Miss Dot had started. The program expanded beyond Wilmington to other cities in North Carolina and eventually to communities across the country, each location adapting the model to fit their own needs while maintaining the core principle of treating people with dignity. Michael continued to be actively involved in the foundation and its programs, visiting regularly and meeting with the young people who benefited from the services. He shared his own story with them, never hiding the fact that he too had needed help and had been fortunate enough to receive it from someone who expected nothing in return. He challenged them to make the same promise he had made to Miss Dot, to remember the help they received and to pass it on to others when they had the opportunity. Many of those young people took that challenge seriously, and over the years, countless stories emerged of foundation beneficiaries going on to help others in their own ways, creating an ever-expanding web of kindness and support. Miss Dot lived to see the full flowering of the legacy that had grown from her simple act of compassion. Though her health remained fragile after her stroke, she found new purpose and joy in watching the foundation's work unfold. She attended events at the youth center when her health permitted, and she read every report and newsletter with keen interest, delighting in the stories of young people whose lives had been changed. She kept in touch with Michael through regular phone calls and visits, and their bond remained as strong as ever, rooted in mutual respect and genuine affection. She often told him that she was the one who had been blessed by their relationship, that seeing what he had become and what he had done with his success brought her more happiness than anything else in her life. In 2006, Miss Dot's health began to decline more seriously, and Michael made sure to spend as much time with her as possible. They talked about everything and nothing, sometimes discussing serious topics and other times just enjoying each other's company in comfortable silence. She told him that she was at peace with her life and that she had no fear of what came next, knowing that the ripples from her kindness would continue long after she was gone. Michael held her hand and told her that she had taught him the most important lesson anyone could learn, that the measure of a life was not in what you accumulated, but in what you gave away and how you treated people when they were at their most vulnerable. Dorothy Mitchell passed away peacefully in her sleep on a warm summer night in 2007, surrounded by photographs of the people she had loved and mementos of a life well lived. Her funeral was attended by hundreds of people, including many whose lives she had touched over the years through small acts of kindness that she had probably forgotten, but they had never would. Michael delivered the eulogy, speaking through tears about the woman who had changed his life and taught him that true greatness was not measured in championships or wealth, but in compassion and human connection. He announced that the foundation would be establishing an annual Dorothy Mitchell Award, to be given to individuals who embodied her values of selfless service and kindness to others. The years since Miss Dot's passing have seen the Dorothy Mitchell Foundation grow and evolve, adapting to changing needs while staying true to its core mission. The Marcus Mitchell Youth Center has become a model for similar facilities in other communities, demonstrating the power of providing young people with safe spaces and supportive environments where they can develop their potential. The Marcus's Meal program has served millions of meals to young people in need, and research has shown that it has had a measurable impact on educational outcomes and health indicators for the communities it serves. Beyond the statistics and data, though, are the countless individual stories of lives changed, of young people who found hope and opportunity at moments when they might otherwise have given up. Michael himself has never stopped talking about Miss Dot and the lesson she taught him. In interviews and public appearances, he consistently credits her with shaping not just his career, but his character, teaching him that success meant nothing if it was not used to help others. He has written about her in his autobiography and has made sure that her story is told to new generations of young people who might not understand the connection between a meal in a small diner and the global icon he became. He wants them to understand that greatness is built on a foundation of kindness, that the help we receive from others creates an obligation to pass that help forward, and that the smallest gesture at the right moment can literally change the course of a life. The photograph of Marcus Mitchell still hangs in the foundation headquarters, a reminder of the son who never got to chase his dreams, but whose memory has helped thousands of other young people chase theirs. Beside it now hangs a photograph of Miss Dot, her warm smile captured forever, welcoming everyone who walks through the doors the same way she welcomed a hungry teenager all those years ago. Staff members and visitors often pause in front of these photographs, reflecting on the chain of events that led from a moment of compassion in 1978 to the thriving organization that exists today. They understand that they are part of something larger than themselves, a continuing story of kindness building on kindness across time and space. Today, more than 4 decades after Miss Dot first invited that hungry teenager into her diner, the impact of her kindness continues to multiply in ways that would have seemed impossible to imagine. The Dorothy Mitchell Foundation has helped tens of thousands of young people achieve their educational and professional dreams, providing not just financial support, but also mentorship, guidance, and the message that someone believes in their potential. The Marcus Mitchell Youth Center has become a cornerstone of the Willington community, a place where hope is cultivated and futures are built. The Marcus's Meal program has fed countless hungry children, ensuring that no young person has to face the choice between eating and pursuing their dreams. Michael Jordan, now in his 60s and long retired from the game that made him famous, continues to be actively involved in the foundation's work. He has poured more of his substantial wealth into it over the years, ensuring that it will continue to operate and grow long after he is gone. He has established additional programs and initiatives, always guided by the principle Miss Dot taught him about treating people with dignity and respect. He speaks frequently about the importance of gratitude and giving back, using his platform and influence to encourage others to create their own chains of kindness. He often says that of all his achievements, from championship rings to MVP awards to global fame and fortune, nothing makes him prouder than the work of the foundation and the knowledge that Miss Dot's kindness continues to ripple outward through the world. In his private moments, Michael sometimes thinks about that 15-year-old boy standing outside a diner, scared and hungry, and wondering if his dreams were foolish. He thinks about the woman who saw something in him worth nurturing, who gave freely without expecting anything in return, who taught him that the true measure of success is not what you achieve for yourself, but what you do for others. He thinks about the promise he made that day, spoken with a breaking voice and a full heart, to remember the kindness and pass it on. He has kept that promise in ways that exceeded even his own expectations, transforming a single meal into a legacy of compassion that will outlive them all. The story of Michael Jordan and Dorothy Mitchell is ultimately a story about the power of human connection and the ways that kindness compounds over time. It is about seeing potential in others, even when they struggle to see it in themselves, about giving without expectation of reward, about understanding that help offered with dignity is worth more than any amount given with condescension. It is about keeping promises and honoring debts that can never truly be repaid except by passing the gift forward to others. Most of all, it is about the profound truth that we are all connected, that our actions ripple outward in ways we may never fully understand, and that a single moment of compassion can echo through decades and change not just one life, but thousands. What Michael Jordan did for Dorothy Mitchell was more than anyone could have expected or imagined, more than simply paying back a debt or expressing gratitude for a meal given long ago. And when Miss Dot first fed that hungry teenager in her diner, she could never have dreamed that her simple act of kindness would eventually transform into a foundation that would help tens of thousands of young people, a youth center that would become the heart of a community, and a meal program that would ensure no child in need would ever be turned away hungry from participating restaurants across the country, creating an eternal legacy of compassion that would continue to grow and multiply long after both she and Michael were gone, proving that the smallest seed of kindness planted in the right soil can grow into a forest of hope that shelters generations yet to come. So where are you listening from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments below, because this story of kindness connects us all, no matter where we are in the world. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that one act of kindness can change everything, smash that like button to help spread this message of hope to more people who need to hear it. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss another inspiring story that proves goodness still exists in this world. And hey, click on that video appearing on your screen right now for another incredible story that will restore your faith in humanity. Let's keep the chain of kindness going together.